Hey everyone, welcome. Today we are talking about raising adults, like real adults, like adulting, man. Adulting is hard. I mean, it's hard. We all feel it as adults, and especially as parents, we're like, man, adulting is hard. We just want to be kids sometimes. Wouldn't it be nice, right? And sometimes we are, let's not lie about that. But hey, that's a good thing sometimes too. But today we're talking about how to prepare your kids for all the adulting things, because ultimately we want our kids to be independent. We want them to take care of themselves, prepared for whatever they want to do in the world and be successful at. And so I mean, I've heard so many parents talking to me about my kids, they don't know what they want to do. They don't know. And they're in high school, they're at the end of high school, their senior year, and they're just lost, or they're in college and I don't know. I'm just going to college because go to college, right? And they don't know what they're going to do with it. They don't know what the major is. They just don't, they have no direction. And so, and adulting, there's other adulting skills, right? There's so many. We're going to talk with Traci about that today. Traci Bakenhaster, did I pronounce that right? Because
You did.
I
It was
asked
beautiful.
you about that before, and I should have. So thank you for that. And so we are together talking about this today, and she's actually the founder of Adulting University. And I absolutely love that because, man, we do need to teach our kids adulting things. I will talk about a situation with my son last night where it was very adulting, and I have to say, I was super proud of him. He did something that I would never have done as a teenager. So I was very, very proud of him. But that's something we constantly have to think about, especially as they get into middle school, teens, and then heck, even after that, right? But if we can get them to be prepared before they're through our tutelage, then perhaps they can not have to learn some things the hard way. Because I know some of us, right, feel like we weren't prepared and we had to learn some things the hard way. So that's what I hear from parents all the time. Traci, I'm so excited to have you with us today. This is super exciting because you work directly with teens and young people, and this is something that's very personal to you and the reason why you started doing this. So I want to hear about that. And can you just share a little bit about how you got into teaching adulting, because that is something that we think about preparing for life, but we don't often think about it as adults. And that's something I'm really, really, really about, is knowing that end goal. Who are we trying to raise? I talk about that. If you've talked to me on the phone, you know that, look, I say phone and I meant Zoom, right? Because that's how we talk now. But dating myself, but that's what we talk about every single time, is what those kids look like when they're out of your house, when they're 24, 25. What does that look like? And that's what we want to get to. So Traci and I, we're like kindred spirits, man. We're doing this same thing and same purpose, and I love it. So Traci, can you just share with us a little bit about why you're so excited about working with teens? And you work with all kinds of teens in all different areas, and I'm really excited about what you do. So share with us about your background and how you got into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of funny because I've never, like, if you would ask me as a young adult, like, do you want to own a business? I would have laughed in your face and been like, you're crazy. Like, not happening. Yeah, here we are. So, and it was because of the time in my career, I was working in higher education, and part of my job was to go to high schools all around our area, go to co-ops, go to all these places, and just talk to teens about different career paths and different, especially like the more hands-on careers, because it was a community college. So it was more like, hey, did you know this career even exists? And here's a great program to go into for it. And as I'm having conversations with all these kids across the board, right? Middle schoolers all the way up through high school. I mean, I talked to like over 3,500 students in the course of about 6 months. Like, it was insanity. So I got a lot of really good data, and it all came back to, wow, these kids are going down the same path I did, which was, I have no clue what I want to do. I have no concept of money or student loans or any of these things. And it just was like, oh my gosh, why are we not preparing these kids for the real world? Like, we talk so much in our society about college readiness and get ready for college, and you got to be ready for college. And we're going to start as freshmen and sophomores. Granted, not everybody does. Let's be honest. There's a lot of people that wait till senior year, and I'm like, that's not the time to do this. But they don't talk about life skills and your career and career exploration, career readiness. I'm like, guys, where are you at? Like this is more important because this determines if you are going to be successful in college or not, or in your career or not, or in your marriage or not, right? You don't have these skills. This is a big gap. So I saw that gap. I was really frustrated because I know how my young adult journey was, and it was not easy. It was very rough. Made a lot of really poor decisions because I didn't know any better. And I'm like, these kids are going down the same path and nobody's doing anything. And so that's where the passion really started. And I was like, well, I guess I will fill this gap. And so I created a business, and then we're going.
I love that. That is so awesome. And it's really important. I absolutely love when people take something that's like, oh, you see a problem that's existing that you overcame, and you're like, man, I know I need to help these people, right? Because you know exactly what they're going through. And as far as homeschooling parents, we often say, okay, well, they could go to college or not go to college. But if we don't know who we're trying to raise, and we don't have a vision for that, the kind of people we're trying to raise, then it really bogs up. It's really like putting no destination in your GPS and just driving around and hoping that you get somewhere, right? So, and I feel like that's what so many kids are doing too, because they don't have that direction. And so I love that we're having this conversation. I love what you're doing. And so, and when I think about adulting, and I know that we find it hard. So like adults find it hard. So, and teens even harder because it's so new. They don't have a lot of direction a lot of times. And so why is it so hard? Why is adulting so hard?
Well, I think it changes by generation, to be honest with you. Like from generation to generation, every generation has faced different challenges.
Yeah.
I think the challenge with the generation that's coming up through the ranks now is technology. At the end of the day, I think the availability of information has actually been a disservice to this generation because everything is so readily available, and they can just get on TikTok, and that's where they're learning all their stuff. They're on TikTok. They're in their friend groups. They're like online learning these things, and that doesn't mean it's right. And so it's so interesting to me because I know growing up, we had internet, but it wasn't like it is now, right? I mean, we had MySpace, and I was like a preteen when that happened and all the things, but we had to learn, like even looking at research. When we had to do a research project, we had to go to the library and we had to find books, and we had to make sure those books were legitimate. And then when we did have online options, it was, is this a valid source or not? And all these different things. And nowadays, I don't even know if kids know how to find a book in a library, to be honest. I mean, most of them, homeschoolers are a little bit different, but it's still just the concept of everything is so easy to get to. So when they face a challenge, when something doesn't go the way they expect it to go, they shut down. Resilience isn't there, problem solving, right? It's just like, it is just this whole, and so, and we're seeing it show up in the workforce now. So for Gen Z has been coming into the workforce the last couple of years, I was actually just at a workforce meeting last Friday and sitting there just listening to all these employers, and we did these surveys, and the top skills that they're saying these kids don't have is communication skills, interpersonal skills, critical thinking, problem solving. Like it is soft skills are the issue. The amount of Gen Z that gets fired after a couple months in their job is ridiculously higher than any other generation. And it's because these skills are not there because they haven't learned them properly. And so that's where we're at. And so that's why I feel like the adulting world is so hard for these teens, because they don't have resilience. They really struggle when they do run into something, right? If they don't know, and I see it in my own son, and I homeschool him, and I do this for a living. And even it's a society thing. Like, yeah. I'm like, no, you've got to learn how to like find this. I can't just give you the answer. And that's what they want. Like, just give me the answer. I don't want to have to work for this, because then they just get defeated and they shut down.
I totally agree with that. And I find it so fascinating that you bring up this generational thing in the technology, because I feel like there's so much instantaneousness happening. And I don't even know if that's a word, but instantaneousness that they get things so quickly that the patience is not practiced. Mm-hmm. And so I found that in the classroom when I was in the classroom, and that was a long time ago, but even more now today, as they had more technology availability, especially in video games back then, it was so everything was flashy and everything had some kind of engagement, like, I mean, millisecond
Mhm.
movement, and that they could had a hard time sitting and listening. And it was a marked difference between my students and then my son, who didn't have access to that, who we would sit like at a talk, a live talk with somebody presenting about birds for like an hour when he was like 6 and be fine. And he was totally fine and he would be engaged. And it was really fascinating to me, that dichotomy and the instantaneousness of everything. And so the patience and, like you said, the resilience of that. Like, if it doesn't work the first time, then what do I do? Right. So, and I think that has to go with the patience too. That's really fascinating. I love that. And there's so much that we can do. It's funny that you talk about those skills, those soft skills, because that's something when I talk to parents every single day and I go through what that looks like when their kids are older, those are the things they want their kids to have. So what that tells me is that we're not looking at that end goal enough, which I already know. And we're also not being intentional about how to put things into place, which is exactly what you do. So if we have these adulting, first of all, what are some of those adulting skills?
Oh my gosh, I have lists upon lists of the skills. But to make it simple,
Yeah.
I put all these life skills and I condensed them to 4 critical pillars. So for us, it's like 4 foundational pillars to be successful as an adult. So they're interpersonal and communication skills,
Totally.
critical thinking and independence, health, safety, and digital wellness, and then personal responsibility and self-discipline. So those are our 4 foundational pillars. Everything we teach falls into those 4 pillars, rather, as even basic car maintenance that falls under independence, right? It's all these skills that kiddos need to have, but at the foundation, that is really what they need to know, right? They have to know how to do this stuff. They have to be able to be responsible. They have to know how to communicate with their coworkers, with their boss. They have to know how to put boundaries in place to have healthy relationships with the people they interact with, and how to also be like, nope, that's crossing a line. That's not okay, right? And I see that a lot in the homeschooling space because it is funny because homeschoolers overall do tend to be a lot more prepared than regular traditional students. However, there's still gaps. There's still things to work on. And honestly, where a lot of it comes from, it's not social skills. And a lot of people, that's always their thing with homeschooling. Like, listen, I homeschool my kid too. No, we don't have issues with social skills. But within the social skill world, it is, how do you stand up for yourself? I see a lot of homeschool students that are very introverted. They know how to talk to people and they come off very intelligent. But when they face a conflict or they face somebody pushing against them, they get they're like, what do I do? Like most introverted people, they're very like, I don't like conflicts. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to do with this. Or they just are like, I don't want to be in this situation, or this makes me uncomfortable, whatever it might be. And so I see a lot of that in the homeschooling world. And so there's always opportunities to learn this stuff. Even if your kid knows how to do it at home, can they do it with complete strangers? Can they do it in the workplace? Can they do it when you're not there guiding them and coaching them and giving them the words to say and do, right? So sorry, I'll go on rants on this all day long. So
no, I absolutely love that. And you know what, it's so true that you do have to practice those, not just in the home, but you have to practice them outside. And there's been many times when my son's come back and he's like from a scout meeting and he's like, hey, so this kid, I don't really, know how to, I felt kind of weird about it, and they didn't know how to handle it. So we had to go through this whole thing. And so it's really, and I do see that too with homeschoolers, because they don't have the onslaught of conflict that happens at a school environment. And so, especially if they've never been to school. So, that kind of, I mean, for kids that have been to school, they've kind of been there, but it's for those of us that have raised our kids in homeschooling, it is a different situation. So I love that. And those 4 pillars, man, oh man, that self-discipline part, right? I mean, woo!
Biggest challenge of teenagers right there, right? How do I get them to do the thing?
Exactly. That's what I teach a lot about, is having the kids own their own education, which in turn own their life, right?
Yep.
They own their schedule, they own that kind of thing. And so really getting them to that place where you're giving them ownership of that stuff. So I love that. So if these kids let's just say, if they have adulting down, like, what will that mean for them? Like, if they're that, like, whoo, we got it. What would that look like?
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine? Could
Could
you
you?
imagine? Like, I always joke with people, but it's like serious at the same time. I'm always like, listen, if your kiddo starts at our program and goes through the whole gamut, even if they don't start till freshman year, whatever it is, but they go through even 3-4 years of our program where they get everything, they're going to be more prepared than their grandparents that are in their 80s. They're going to know the world better than most adults, because that's most of the stuff we learn the hard way. We never learn it, right? We learn it in the moment, whatever it looks like. And so these kids are going to come out, they're going to have an idea. They're going to know who they are. They're going to know their values. They're going to know what's important to them. They're going to know their career path and what's a good direction for them, how to get there. They're going to understand money and how to not go into debt in a unrealistic way, right? It's like, okay, if you have to buy a car and you go in $5,000 in debt, like, but you know how to the plan to get it paid off, whatever that might be, but they are going to just have these skills. They're going to know how to approach their boss in a healthy way to ask for a raise or a promotion, or how to even get the job, because Lord knows that is a whole challenge these days. Let me tell you.
Yeah. In the in-person interview, right?
Yes. Well, even a Zoom interview.
Or even on Zoom. Yeah.
I was like, it's almost even worse on Zoom. That's what these employers were talking about last week too. They're like, we've had people that didn't know how to operate their camera. The camera's all over the place. And I'm like sitting there like, oh.
Or showing up in their jammas or something.
Yes, yes. Or they have no pants on and they stand up and you're like, oh, what's happening? But it's like, and it's simple stuff that you don't think about until you're like reading about it. And I think the challenge a lot of us as parents, like, oh, my kid wouldn't do that. And I will tell you a really funny story. So my son, we homeschool. This is our first official year of homeschooling. So before this, he's been in public school. He's never done online learning or any of that stuff. And even now with homeschooling, we have a really awesome co-op that's in person. And so he does that. And they go the traditional route of books and all that stuff. But when he was in public school, they had tablets and computers, but everything was done on Google. So I had him enroll in my program, and it is fully virtual. And we use Zoom for our clubs and hangouts and stuff like that. And my kid didn't know how to Zoom. He was like, what am I doing? And he's clicking on stuff and all that. I'm sitting there like, I teach people all this stuff. I did not even think that he didn't know how to do this. And I was like, wow, that's a big gap, because he has not done this stuff, right? I know this stuff. He sees me use Zoom all the time, but we have not sat down together and said, hey, buddy, here's how you Zoom. Now, he's very smart, and I have at least taught him how to figure things out. So he figured it out. And next thing you know, he's throwing emotions and all the goofy stuff and navigating Zoom like he's known it his whole life.
So fast.
But it just blew my mind that I'm like, wow, even as a parent who literally teaches this stuff, didn't know that there was a gap with my kid when it came to online learning, because I didn't know until he was there. And so that's where it's like, as parents, we sometimes are so close to them. We don't always see those gaps, and we just assume, well, they're seeing us do it or whatever. And so they're just picking it up as they go. That's not always the case. And especially, again, if we're talking about, it's kind of embedded in most of this generation because of society expectations and online world. It's, if you don't figure it out relatively quickly, you kind of check out or give up.
Yeah, I had the same situation happen with my son when he went up for his first brown belt in martial arts testing. They have this huge, rigorous, it's like 2-day event, and it's like very rigorous. So he had to take a written test, right? So he's been homeschooled his entire life. So you see where I'm going with this. So he's never had a test, like not that kind of test, like where it's like written, you have to, and so I didn't think anything of it, because the kid's wicked smart. He has like a memory, like I don't even have this kind of memory. It's just like the recalls like that, right? So I'm like, he'll be fine. I didn't even focus on it. Like I was like, what? He'll be fine. We didn't need to prepare. He almost failed the test because he didn't know. He's like, I said, well, what happened during the test? He's like, oh, I just wrote it all down. And then I was like, I just handed it in. It was the first one done. And I'm like, oh, so sorry about that, buddy. Mommy didn't teach you how to take a test.
Yep.
I was like, oh, that's a homeschool fail right there. So it was just really, really funny. So we had to go through, it's okay, testing skills. He's going up again this next month. So I have to remember to remind myself to go over that again. But it was just so funny. It's so funny. So thinking about what if our kids don't master these skills? I'm thinking about this like beautiful picture of like them being prepared. They're all on, doing amazing. And then I'm like, what happens if they don't? And I know that you see this all the time. So what are you seeing as far as the kids that don't master these skills? What does that look like?
It looks like, let's say from this perspective, especially speaking as a parent, the last thing we want is our kids to not have confidence, to be insecure about their abilities or their skills, or to have mental health struggles like depression, anxiety, and other things. But that's ends up what happening because they aren't confident in their abilities. They aren't confident in their skills, or they do go into college or they go into their first career and they don't feel ready or prepared, or they're just like confused. And then that triggers all these other things, right? Because their brain does not know how to grasp and process all this stuff. I mean, I've seen it even with the most academically high achieving students. I mean, not to like bring it down, but if you look at suicide rates in college, a lot of them are the high achieving students or high achieving athletes that everybody loved and all this stuff. But because they were never taught to really manage stress, because they never really had a lot, it came easy naturally to them. They had these expectations. I'm going to let my parents down, right? Like they did not have that confidence and truly believe in themselves. And so then they put it towards their character. Oh, I am a failure. I'm not good at this. I am a disappointment. I am all these things. And so then you see these horrible things that come from that. And then that's what happens. We see those kinds of things that happen with students when they're not prepared. You see it where they do just struggle, right? Maybe they're not dealing with that stuff, but they're just struggling, right? They're struggling, they're bouncing from one job to the next job, or paycheck to paycheck, or, they get debt collectors, whatever it could be. But this is what you see when you have these kids that are not ready for the real world, and they don't know what they're doing, or they end up back in mom and dad's house by the time they're 30 and they're there for a while, which I know some parents I've seen, which always cracks me up in like groups and stuff, that are like, oh, I would love that for my kid. I'm like, yeah, but is that what's best for your kid?
Yeah. Exactly.
Probably not.
Yeah, I literally have seen that very up close and personal in my neighborhood, let's just say. But it's I love that you talk about that too, because I feel like when kids are so lost, and I mean, adults are the same, right? We're all the same. So when they're so lost and you're just like not sure, what's my path? And you look around and there's all these people that have it figured out, right? And they're doing their thing and they're so successful. And here's you and you're like, I don't even know. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. That does take a toll on your psyche.
It does. Well, and then you add social media into it, because this generation, that's where they get everything. That's where they get all their information. So now they're seeing all their friends. We got the whole FOMO situation now happening. Oh my gosh, they're in Italy. They're doing all this stuff. And oh my gosh, look, they have it together and they have this great job. Even though we all know that's not all true. They've got their own issues, but that's not what these kids are seeing. And they're just in their head, wow, I totally failed. I am now comparing myself to anybody and everybody, and seeing all these influencers on TikTok, and they're making it on YouTube. Why am I not making it on YouTube? And it just spirals, and it's not a pretty place to be.
Yeah, and I really love the way you talked about the high end. I don't want to say high end; that's such a bad word, but like the really high achieving kids. There you go. The highly motivated kids. Because I watched a friend of our family. Their daughter went to college, and because of all the high expectations, and we're Asian, so like high Asian expectation families, and so the expectation for perfection was so high that she ended up going to USC, super high, falutin school. And she, in her freshman year, she weighed 97 pounds. She was so stressed out. And then she ended up going the opposite way, right? So she was like, forget, all of this kind of thing. So it's really, really amazing that, you have to just take care of that, like, identity. And it's so fun. This is all the stuff we want for our kids. This is all the stuff we talk about. I talk with parents every single day about. So, what are some of the ways that we can start helping our kids with this? Some practical things, if we haven't even really started, what are some of the things we can implement in our everyday life that we can just help our kids get started with these skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is just bringing them into the conversation. So that's, I mean, I always call that like a passive learning, but it's still a way of learning and it's still a good start. That doesn't put pressure on parents to feel like they have to teach life skills like I do, right? They don't have to be me. They don't have to get in there and be like the teacher and teach all the stuff and the tools and come up with all that. You don't have to do that because that can be overwhelming. You're already doing academics and other stuff, but you could at least passively teach your kids, bring them into the conversation. Say, hey, we're having our budgeting meeting this month. Like, come sit down with us. Like, let's talk about this and let's show you the bills, show you the expenses, take them to the grocery store, give them opportunities to pick out the meals for the week and go to the store with you and pick out groceries and kind of like see that real world and see what those things are. And again, I know a lot of homeschoolers do those pieces, which is great, but any opportunities that you can do that stuff, that's at least a way to start giving them some exposure to what they're going to experience in the real world. Another big one for the areas that aren't as easy, like conflict and other things, is role playing. And I know it can sometimes feel so awkward and weird, especially for a teenager, like, oh, mom, but make it a game. Make it like family life skills charades. I don't know, like just doing something to get them exposure to that. Looking at scenarios online, like you watch a movie together, talk about, oh my gosh, so this main conflict that happened, how would you handle that situation? How do you think they handled that situation? Like start just kind of everything that you do, try to find those opportunities to have conversations, to ask questions, open-ended questions in a positive way. We're not trying to insult or be like, oh my gosh, what the heck do you do that? But just opportunities throughout the day, throughout your life to show them those things that will at least give them some exposure. But then also going to that level of getting additional support if you need to and looking for more structured approaches and finding where the gaps are. Like, okay, where are the gaps in our homeschooling? Where are the gaps in my kids' life skills abilities? Because you could have 3 kids and all 3 of them have different gaps. Just because they're in the same house doesn't mean they're all the same gaps. Some might be better at this one than the other one. So knowing exactly what your kiddo needs and looking for those resources to help fill that so it takes them off your plate too.
Yeah, I love that. In those little teaching sessions, we have that a lot where we do, role playing or, I say, what would you say here? Like, okay, so if you were really trying to be an advocate for yourself, what would that look like? And how would you say something? Or I'd even give it to them. I'll give the line. I'll say, say something like this. And they'll be like, oh, I don't know, And I'm like, well, let's see what is behind that. Is that a win-win situation? Are you being rude? No, you're, and so we're trying to figure that out all the time. And then, like I was told you, so one of the stories last night we had was my son, he's been trying to really get into bed faster because he often gets sidetracked and his brain just is on like high mode all the time as far as thinking. So he likes to just get in these thinking modes, and he was writing an article last night, so really late at night, he just got real inspired. So I was like, okay, whatever. So we homeschool, right? It's fine. So he got inspired and he started writing this article. It was very good, and he was trying to figure out how to word things and all this stuff, and he was rewriting, and then so he was still thinking about it, and he was in that mode thinking about it. And he was in the shower forever. And I was like, buddy, I warned him twice. And then I was like, okay, you got 90 seconds. Get out of the shower. I'm going to turn it off on you right now.
Yep.
And so he got out, and I'm like yelling out 30 seconds, like he says he's so mad when he got out. So he's 16, right? So he gets out of the shower and he finishes up and he comes in and he goes, and he's mad, and that's an unreasonable, da, da. And so we started like, we're having a little moment about that, and we're having a little argument there, and he was getting more mad. And I said, I'm okay. I get it, being mad. I get it, but it is still what it is, like that's not how we roll. And then he's getting super mad. And I said, buddy, it was like almost crazy. And I was like, buddy, who are you really mad at right now? And he stopped and he thought, and he was really, he's crying, and he stopped and and he said, well, if I'm really honest, I'm really mad at myself and I'm taking it out on you. And I was like, inside, right? Inside. I'm like,
trying so hard not to smile in the middle of the moment, like,
right. But I did say, I was like, that sounds like it's pretty right on to what my perspective is, and I was like, And he says, I'm really sorry. And then and it was really amazing because I said, buddy, I'm so proud of you. That was such a mature thing to say. Like, there's so many adults that think, even if they think it, which a lot of them don't, but even if they think it, they don't say it. And I said, that was so brave of you. Like, that's so mature, and those kind of situations where, and again, we've had this culture of personal growth and like reflection, and we always think about that. This is just our culture, but those kind of situations where you can honor where they are adulting. Ooh, he felt really good about that. Even though he was still upset with himself and upset with the situation, he felt really good about that.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. And I think you handled it exactly as parents, right? Where you acknowledge that, like, dude, great job. Like, that is awesome. Like, giving that praise. I mean, even if they're 16, 17, 18, it doesn't matter. It's still our job as parents to like encourage our kids in that space. Like, hey, you did a good thing. Positive reinforcement really does go a long way. Like, let's be honest, especially when we're talking about confidence and having them believe in themselves, right? Be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that was awesome. Like, you did that all on your own. That was a great job. Like, very well done. Applause, sir. Right? Like, it's
totally. I wouldn't have done that when I was 16.
Right. Most people wouldn't. And like you said, most adults don't even do that. Like, oh, yeah. I'm not going to admit I'm wrong. Not gonna do it. Not happening. And then what's that doing for our kids? That's not role modeling anything.
It's so amazing. It's just incredible when you have that culture to where that conversation is constantly happening. So I love, and when you can't, or you feel like you don't have the skills to do that, I mean, and I'm even thinking, I'm like, man, I need to have him to go in the Traci's program, because there are things that I'm not as good at. There are things that I'm missing. There are things that blind spots, I love that. So how can we get in touch with you? How can we figure out, like, man, I need some Traci in my life, and like, I need some adulting university. How do we, because I know you also have a quiz that you're offering to our audience as well. So can you tell us a little bit about how to get in touch with you and about the quiz?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, definitely on our website, I mean, adulting-university.com is our website. You can contact us there. You can connect on all our social medias, all the things. You can get to the quiz that way as well, as whale. That was Southern of me there coming out. Little family roots showing.
Happens.
So that's great. Facebook, I'm on Facebook a lot too. I think I'm the only Traci Bakenhaster that exists on Facebook. So pretty easy to find that way. But the quiz is awesome. So I created this quiz because, one, who doesn't love a little quiz? Those are always fun to like see, like, where are we at? What's going on? And this is a way you fill it out based on your kid of where they are. So we ask questions on like, rate where your kid is on these abilities. Can they do this X, Y, and Z? And at the end, you get a readiness score. So you get, hey, your teenager has a score of blank, right? And there's a multiple different areas that kind of the scores fall into, and it tells you right where they're at, like based on just those questions. And then there's a really cool follow-up to it where it's actually a full-blown checklist that does go a lot deeper into the skills and things that you can then print off, have at home to say, okay, where are the gaps? The checklist can be a little overwhelming because there's a lot, but the reason we have the checklist, because that's everything on that checklist we teach. So it kind of goes very in line with our programs, but that way, if it is a little overwhelming, it's like, well, we help you. This is just something to show, like, where are they at? What do you want them to know? If it's on that list, then we can teach it. So it's a great little way to just kind of assess where you guys currently are and have some resources to help support moving forward.
I love that kind of a snapshot. And I have one like that too, where it's just like a snapshot of what's today looks like. And then in a couple months, you take it again. In a couple months, you take it again, and you just see where you're at. And that kind of, it helps. It's a good reminder too of like, oh, what are the things we should be teaching? Right? Or should be kind of coming up in our life. So I love that. And then getting in touch with Traci is definitely something that we all need to do. I feel like some of us, adulting university doesn't necessarily have to do with kids and young adults, but sometimes, yeah, you might want to branch out there. But
I have thought about it. I've thought about running our gamified program for doing an adult edition just for fun. Like, I think that would be really fun. I'm not going to lie. We can all compete with each other. It'd be good.
Oh my gosh, that would be fun. I would totally do that. Awesome. Traci, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited. And what a great, amazing conversation we had today. You guys, I hope you got filled up and got some ideas on how you need to think about creating or just not creating, but including it in your culture of your family and your homeschool. And then make sure you get Traci's quiz, and we're going to put it in the Facebook comments, where it's already on YouTube in the description, and it's going to be in the podcast in the show notes. So make sure you get that and take it right away, and then contact Traci.
Yes, please do. I'm here. Let's go. Let's do this.
Let's do this. All right, you guys, I will talk to you again next week. See you soon. Bye-bye.